everybody. Yeah, the power was out from what time? From 8 until 10, and it was supposed to be back now, but it only came back at like 27 past, and then I needed to set everything up. So that is what was holding. My daughter has coffee all. Appreciate the coffee though. Okay, so I'm just quickly opening my doc. Okay, again, I have made intentional, I don't know if it counts as mistakes. Yeah, I think it does count as mistakes, I would agree. I just need to change. Okay. These are just things that I have noticed that some of my students do in this type of question. So in a question 1B, students often do make these kinds of, I don't know, I wouldn't call it errors, actually. I definitely wouldn't call it errors. However, I would say that some of these things that I have done are a waste of time. And we need to make sure that we are not wasting. Okay? So, there we go. Now I can share. Okay, and I think I'm also just going to share the link with you all in the chat. I'm going to make it anyone with a link can view. So in this essay, so I took my original piece that I wrote, and I took the piece that other doctor wrote. So obviously I wrote that podcast piece. Yes. I wrote that podcast piece, and the text that it was being compared to was the text that it was being compared to was an article, or yeah, just an article. Okay. So now we are taught to say something like in this essay, which is fine. That is a stylistic choice. Most of the time, especially for this type of essay, it's not really necessary. Okay? So what I'm going to, you know what? There we go. So what I want you to do is, as we go through this, I want you to, in the chat, tell me what you think I did right and what you think I did wrong. Okay? Are we all good with that? Cool. So in this essay, we will compare and contrast the podcast and the article, focusing on form, structure, and language, while also analyzing the effects on the audience and the purpose of each text. So I want you to just note here that we are, I said the specific thing because I think that if you say something like this at the beginning, it shows that you are looking out for these things and you're looking for how form, structure, and language look at like form, structure, and language are related to audience and purpose. Okay. So the podcast, aimed at promoting benefits of Epic software for healthcare professionals, adopts a more casual and conversational tone, whereas the article takes a critical and reflective approach to the implementation of the software in the healthcare industry. Now, something I want to note here is that I just had a casual mention of tone. Now, if we're mentioning tone, what element is that? Is that looking at form? Is it looking at structure? Or is it looking at language? What would you say? Maybe. I would agree with Heaven on Earth memes. I would say that it is form. Because form is related to the style and things like that. I've got a list here on my phone. I'm sorry, I don't know how to get it onto my computer right now. I will figure it out later. It wasn't copying and pasting, but I didn't have power, so I was just typing on my phone. So in terms of our elements of form, things that we can look at are genre, tone, style, our point of view, so if it's first person or third person, our organization, our use of dialogue or monologue, our use of multimedia elements, which isn't really something we come across in this exam, but it is an element. Our use of dialogue or monologue, our use of multimedia elements. So the use of monologue, the use of monologue in, if you're going to abuse your powers, Chosen Undead, I will just remove mod mode. So don't abuse your power. So then we've got the use of rhetorical devices, the use of figurative language, so that's like symbolism and imagery. We've got formatting, so like headings, bullet points, paragraphs, and how these are all formatted. So in terms of there was one exam that required you to do a brochure. So what would be required of a brochure and what would be the conventions of a brochure? Next up, we've got, I'm just going to go through these. I've listed 10 of each type. So we've got structure. Just give me a second. Okay. Descriptive writing plays a factor in what? Can you just elaborate on that, Heaven on Earth memes? So let me just quickly go through structure quickly. So we've got our introduction, our body, and our conclusion. Now, if you say something like, the text has an introduction, a body, and a conclusion, I'm going to like just become very sad. Honestly, like very sad. Because like, yeah, there is much more to it than just the text has an introduction, a body, and so the next thing we need to look at, okay, so when we talk about introduction, body, and conclusion, we're looking for, okay, so for introduction, we're looking at the hook, we're looking at background information, we're looking at a thesis statement, and why it might be structured in that way. So we're not just looking to say, okay, it has a hook, or that there is background information provided, or that there is a thesis statement, but we want to go in depth as to why that is the case. Why is it relevant for this specific audience? Why is it relevant for this text type? Let's see what Heaven on Earth meme said. The more description you give, the more information there is to work with, allowing the reader to imagine the object to imagine the objective as well. Okay, I'm just... Okay, you're talking about descriptive writing playing a factor, but it's playing a factor in what? I'm just a little bit confused as to what it's playing a factor in. I'm not sure where we are, what specific point that I made you are referring to. Or are we talking about this? Yeah, can you just, yeah. So, Chosen Undead, you said you need to use a structure that relates the information on the brochure in a way that can, oh, we're talking about the brochure. Okay, cool. Yes, we would need to use descriptive writing, and that would also add to it. I totally get that. Thank you so much. So you need to use a structure that relates to the information on the brochure in a way to can be quickly read and grabs the reader's attention. Okay. Yeah, I think that is true. You don't want people are not going to spend ages on your brochure. So another element we're going to look at is body. So how are we addressing our main points? How are we providing supporting evidence? What counter arguments are we providing? And how are we going about providing these counter arguments? Are we doing it in an aggressive way? And this would also, and are we using facts, figures, statistics? How are we using our evidence, and why are we using our evidence in this way? Okay. And in terms of our structure of our body paragraphs, we're going to look at, okay, so generally, if I write an argumentative essay, for instance, I would have my like thesis statement at the top in my introduction and whatever, and then I would basically give an overview of what's to follow in the essay. And then each body paragraph will deal with one aspect. And then as I deal with each aspect, I will give a point, I will give an example, I will explain, and I will link. Okay. Now for text analysis, as we're doing here, well, comparative analysis, we are looking at, okay, this piece, we're looking at the podcast versus the article. So I like to structure it, and I think this is a very effective way to structure it. I like to, I mean, you can comment on the document, but I might need to send you another link. You can just comment in the chat. The chat is cool. But if you do want to, Yeah, just comment on the in the chat rather. Okay. So I'm just going to finish these points quickly that I'm making here. Then we've got our conclusion. So is it a summary or is it a restatement of a thesis? Is there a call to action? Why would there be a call to action? So I'm not just asking you to identify, I'm asking you to tell me why. Why is it what it is if we relate it to audience and purpose? Then we look at the transition. So are there words or phrases that connect ideas and guide the reader? The use of paragraphs and paragraph structure, the use of headings and subheadings, chronological, spatial, or topical organization. So how is the text organized and why is it organized in that way? The use of lists or bullet points, that might be relevant. There was a text that some of my students did where it had an article and then at the end it had a couple of bullet points. The use of quotations, anecdotes, or examples, and then the use of visual aids, which is not something you really deal with. Then lastly, language. So we're looking at vocabulary and lexis. So we're looking at, are there any specialized terms or jargon? Are there colloquial expressions? What level of lexis is used? We might also look at lexical fields, and like when I speak in the podcast, I have a lexical field. I don't think I actually mentioned it in this analysis, but I have a lexical field surrounding like hot food and spice and stuff like that. We might look at sentence structure, and this might be simple, compound, and complex sentences. However, I need you to know that it is not enough to tell me that they use simple sentences to make it easy to understand for the audience. That might be a valid point if you're going to follow up what you're saying with they use simple sentences to make it easier to follow for the audience, because the audience is primarily lay people who may not be educated, or they might use simple sentences because they are building on what they are saying in a more in a simpler way, I suppose. And then the same goes for compound and complex. Why would we have those strategies for writing? And then we've got grammar and punctuation. How is grammar and punctuation used? Is it used in a typical way? Is it used in a way that is more uncommon? Is there a use of active or passive voice, and why do they do that? I always want to know why. The use of direct or indirect speech, because the why is all about the analysis. That is where you're analyzing. You're looking at, okay, now why tells us what effect it actually has. And then we don't want to just say what effect it has, but we also want to say, why does the writer want to create that effect? Then we've got the use of direct or indirect speech, the use of figurative language like metaphors, similes, personification, rhetorical devices like repetition, parallelism, alliteration. Now, I want you to note that rhetorical devices were mentioned also in structure. Oh no, they were mentioned in form, sorry. Yeah. So rhetorical, all of these things overlap. There's not like this clear-cut definition for each type. We've got descriptive language, we've got persuasive language, the use of inclusive or exclusive language. So in terms of pronouns, pronoun usage, this is people's favorite, talking about you, us, we. Are we using inclusive language or are we using exclusive language? Okay, So these are things that we can look at. I don't know if I will get time before you guys actually writing in May to do a bit of a series on these. But yeah, I will paste them in a document and put them somewhere for you. Okay. So, the podcast aimed at promoting the benefits of the Epic software for healthcare professionals adopts a more casual and conversational tone, whereas the article takes a critical and reflective approach to the implementation of the software in the healthcare industry. Starting with form, the podcast, okay, now here I've said starting with form, okay? Now, how does that help? That says that I have some kind of clear structure. So I have structured it specifically in this instance with a paragraph on form, a paragraph on structure, and a paragraph on language, okay? And then I've got my conclusion paragraph and I've got my introduction paragraph. Now, many of you I might have told you that you shouldn't necessarily do this. I mean, it's not a problem to do this. It's not bad to do this or good to do this. It's just figure out how you want to structure it. So the reason I specifically structured it like this is because a lot of you do structure it like this. So I wanted to show you the correct way of structuring it like this. Okay, so if we're going to break up form, structure, and language, what I did here was I went through and I said, okay, now what are 3 or 4 things? Where has the chat gone? Just give me a second. Okay. So we can split it up into form, structure, and language like this, as long as we do it well. So starting with form, the podcast is an auditory medium. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. So what I was saying is that I went through and I looked for, okay, what are 3 elements of form I can compare, or I think I said 3 or 4, I can't remember. 3 or 4 elements of structure and 3 or 4 elements of language. And I made sure that in that way, I covered all aspects. And each time I tried to connect it to the audience and the purpose. So starting with form, the podcast is an auditory medium designed for easy consumption by busy healthcare professionals. Okay? So it's designed for easy consumption by busy healthcare professionals. So now, here I have elaborated on it, okay? So this is my purpose, right? Now, the casual tone and colloquial language used by Dr. Pepper help to create okay, tell me, what is the guy's opinion? The casual tone and colloquial language used by Dr. Pepper helps to create a friendly and relatable atmosphere. Yeah, but what is Dr. Pepper's opinion? You're saying, but that's Dr. Pepper's opinion. When you're saying that, what do you mean? Making it more appealing to the target audience. Okay, so this is actually something that I see you all using all the time, and I can't remember why I used the specific phrase. Okay, why would we want to make it more appealing to the target audience? Anyone got any ideas? in order for the target audience to engage more with the text. Yes, there is a lot of competition in the podcast market, as well as there being some kind of monetary reward for him if people interact with his podcast. Okay, are we good with that? It's a sponsorship, so the comparison would be that Dr. Pepper's opinion is not genuine, whereas the article one is as he has no other benefits. Okay, this is actually something that I have been noticing in many of your assignments. You are focused very much on bias and stuff like that, and while that is great, it doesn't always lead to you analyzing language, form, and structure. It just has you looking at whether there is bias. Okay? Now, great, it's great to identify that there is bias, but how does that bias relate to how language, form, and structure are used? So he makes it more appealing to the audience by only mentioning the positive side of the project, not mentioning the negative side or the cons. This technique is used mostly in marketing. Very good. Yes, that is definitely something that is good. Well done. Therefore, allowing the information to actually be taken in by the reader, making the information more relevant through the reader. Well done. I love that. That is wonderful. Is Agways. Okay. So, to create a friendly and relatable atmosphere, making it more appealing to the target audience, there's a lot of competition in the podcast market, as well as there being some kind of monetary reward for him if people interact with his podcast. In contrast, the article is a written piece that requires more time and concentration from the reader. It employs a more formal and academic tone, which is appropriate for its purpose of critically examining the impact of digitization on the doctor-patient relationship. Okay. So what it is doing, I felt like the purpose of that article really was related to how digitization is impacting doctors. And I felt like that was a major focus. Now, I see that, I don't know if this is an early revision, I don't know, I felt like I did talk about more in my essay, but apparently not. Yeah. In terms of structure, the podcast follows a simple and linear format, beginning with an introduction, followed by a brief explanation of the software's benefits. Okay, so I've given the structure and how it is. So I've explained what. I've explained the what. And ending with a call to action for doctors to adopt the software. Now I've told you what the relevance is of this. So now this is where I'm actually analyzing. This straightforward structure helps to convey the message clearly and concisely, making it easier for the audience to understand and remember the key points. Yeah, again, I have made the same error. Okay? Here, I have not So I have not really connected it to why the text type so desperately needs to be digest. Okay? So I could connect this to audience, or I could connect it to purpose. Well, I could connect it to both. I'm going to say here, now I do want to say here that previously I did say that it is for busy doctors. So maybe I don't need to directly connect it. However, for the person marking your exams, you're just going to directly connect it so that they see, okay, you are making these connections. You are connecting these thoughts. These thoughts are making sense. Okay. On the other hand, the article is more complex in structure, weaving personal anecdotes, research findings, and expert opinions together to build a comprehensive argument. Okay, again, do you agree with me? What are potential reasons? I just want to say potential reasons for this. I want to. You don't agree with me. Good. Yes, I want some engagement. Tell me why. So I'm going to say potentially because of the difference in text type and limitation of how much can be said. And so I would say this is potentially because of difference in text type and limitation of how much can be said. So that would be my analysis statement that I've got here. This intricate structure allows the author to present a nuanced perspective on the issue, encouraging the reader to think critically and engage with the topic on it. Okay, then here I can also say that this adds to his purpose of we've said his purpose we haven't actually spoken about his specific purpose. So I'm going to say this adds to his purpose of how am I going to phrase this? This adds to his purpose of providing Now, this is very much my interpretation. This adds to its purpose of aiding healthcare professionals in making the informed decisions and in promoting Yes, I agree with that. So professionals in making the informed decisions and in promoting an understanding from Okay. This is not quite the best way to say this. I'm sorry. Yeah. Something I do want to say here, just on that note, is here in my introduction, what I would usually do is I would specifically state who the audience is. For each text, and I would state how they differ and how they are similar. Okay. Okay. Language is another key aspect in which the podcast. Language is another key aspect in which the podcast and the article differ significantly. Okay. So now I've structured it like this. The podcast uses informal and conversational language. Okay. Now, I feel like I have spoken about this before. Colloquial language. So this feels a little bit repetitive. Okay. With phrases such as stay spicy and hot take. Now here is where I have actually provided examples, and these examples are great. So someone says Bob could also have the purpose of not only informing healthcare professionals, but make it simple enough for everyone who read the text to understand what benefit the project could. I do hear what you're saying. Okay, wait, who is Bob? Is Bob the article dude? Okay, so I do hear what you're saying, heaven on earth memes, but the problem I have with it is that the article, and I think we disagreed on this the other day, the article ends off with him talking about how all this technology is not actually giving him extra time with his patients, but it is stealing from the time he should be spending with his patients. It is detracting from what he should actually be doing. And that's what the article is about. And so in your exam, if this is the take you're going to take, the take you're going to have where you consider the first part of the article, but you don't consider the very critical part where he gives his own opinion and he says, okay, now that I've used it all this time, it's actually not so great. And so it shows a lack of understanding of the text. And so you will get marked down for that. So I've given an example, stay spicy and hot take. Yes. Yes, which contributes, they are embedded quotes. So that's great, which contribute to the friendly and approachable tone. So I've said, what effect do they have? So we wanted to look at what effect does the language, we want to know about form, structure, and language and what effect they have on the text and the meaning of the text. Okay, yeah, okay, so what would a better word be than approachable? Okay. So relatable. The thing is, if we say they make it more playful, so if we say which contributes to the friendly and playful tone, okay? Now, friendly and playful, it's going to sound redundant to put those two next to each other, okay? We should just choose one. The difference in friendly and approachable is friendly is how I am behaving towards the audience, and approachable is how I am coming across as a person for them to come towards me. So yes, I agree that relatable would be a great word there, because approachable, considering it is a podcast, no one's going to approach me. Approachable carries the idea that someone is actually going to be able to approach me. So they're going to be able to email me or something like that. But that's not the vibe I'm going for. I'm going for relatable because, yeah. Okay, so I'm going to go for relatable here. I think that is... Okay, I get this whole trustworthy thing, but I don't think that the words stay spicy and hot take really creates a trustworthy tone. It doesn't make me trust a doctor or a colleague more. I actually find it a little bit cringe. I find it very cringe. But yes, I think if it was a speech, it would have been more fitting, because approachable would have been perfect, because then they can approach me after after the speech. Now, this choice of language helps to establish a connection with the audience and makes the content more accessible. Okay? Now, this is what I'm missing again. And this is exactly what all of you every time miss. Every single time. Okay? So, this choice of language helps to establish a connection with the audience and makes the content more accessible. And I have said this on some of your things. So what? Why does it need to be more accessible? It needs to be, personally, I would say, I could go on and I could say, the doctor is more likely to follow or to subscribe to the podcast if it is if they feel more connected to the host. Additionally, I'm struggling with punctuation today, so additionally, it would make it would increase the likelihood that the doctor would send it on to the hospital decision makers and admin staff for consideration. Okay. let's see. It needs to be more accessible as he's trying to get the audience to click on the link or use it to, because if he comes off as very strict and closed off, his advertising attempt wouldn't be successful. Essentially, due to him having financial benefits. Oh, okay. It would be okay. Let me just due to him benefiting financially due to people using the link, the code. He is doing everything he can to create this connection. Okay. Now, in contrast, the article employs more formal and sophisticated language with terms such as, okay, so we've already, this feels again repetitive, with terms such as epidemic levels of burnout and viscerally, volubly, hates. Okay, now, this is, I think this was an intentional thing I did. Instead of saying employs more formal and sophisticated language, okay? I could here explore the idea of lexical fields relating to doctors, jargon relating to doctors, and what this does is it makes him a believable doctor. And to non-doctors, and makes him relatable to doctors. Do you see that? So if he had only talked about the statistics, other people wouldn't necessarily want to share his podcast, because humans as a species enjoy entertainment and relation to themselves. Also, that's something we could look at this. Could say here, yes, there is an element of entertainment in the purpose of the podcast, and these add to the entertainment quality. Yeah, that's wonderful. He wants to put through the fact that he's speaking to the audience as if he were in the same room with the person. Yes, these are all wonderful points. Why do you say no? Okay, that is a good point, I suppose, that random nerd, because if he were wanting to talk as if he's in the same room with the person, he might have a more direct address, and he might like very directly address the audience, whereas he does kind of directly address the audience, but it's not the main focus. So I'm going to continue. The choice of language reflects the seriousness of the issue and lends credibility to this. Okay, great. So we have analyze here. This is our analysis statement. Now, the differences in form, structure, and language between the podcast and the article can be attributed to their respective purposes and target audiences. The podcast aims to promote the benefits of the Epic software to healthcare professionals using a casual tone and simple structure to appeal to busy doctors who may be resistant to change. The article, however, seeks to critically examine the impact of digitization on healthcare industry. We're looking at the difference in purposes, adopting a more formal tone and complex structure to encourage thoughtful reflection and discussion among readers. Again, we're a little bit repetitive here, but that is generally how we do, that's generally conclusions. Some English teachers would tell you just don't do a conclusion. You don't need to waste your time on a conclusion. You're not getting marks for how wonderful your essay is. You are getting marks for structure. So I generally say, since you are getting marks for structure, this is a great way to add some kind of structure to your piece and make sure that everything you've said has been linked up. Now let me quickly go to and then in conclusion, the podcast and the article serve different purposes and target, oh gosh, I think that, and yeah, I don't know what happened there. I don't know what happened to the rest of the document. So, if he had only talked about the statistics, other people wouldn't necessarily want to share his. Read that. He wants to put through the fact, okay, we read that. The point is correct, but it's more like he's venting than trying to relate to the audience. But to be frank, I don't have the text on me right now, so I'm going off. Okay, well, I'm going to open the text now. Okay, so in terms of actually achieving the goal, I think I partially succeeded. I don't think I would have gotten full marks for a piece like this. In terms of length, you're seeing the general length that I've got here. And I didn't even say I didn't even mention that much, honestly. And if we look at our word count, we've got 520 words. So I don't want you writing pages and pages and pages because you're going to run out of time, but make sure that you are at least analyzing some parts of form, some parts of structure, some parts of language. And you're not just mentioning the things, but you are actually analyzing them. Okay. So let me quickly open our... Okay. Because I would say that this has a purpose, that random node, because a specific purpose of actually, as we were discussing, he was trying to actually, I'm not sure what text you guys are talking about in this chat. So I think we'll just move on to, I need us to move on to our text analysis. Okay, get started with our text analysis. So what we're going to do is we're analyzing form, structure, and language of this text again. Okay. Now this is going to be a longer analysis. It is for 25 marks, and it is going to be much more in depth than our previous piece, our question 1b. Okay. It's going to be more in depth here. Yeah, I need you to make sure that you are discussing enough elements of form, enough elements of language, enough elements of structure, but also that you are not just pointing them out and giving the same point every time. This keeps the audience engaged. That is actually where I would have taken marks away from my own piece. I spoke very much just about audience engagement. Instead of the actual ins and outs, it wasn't a very insightful piece. I had a headache and I wasn't able to think much, and I only gave myself 20 minutes to do it. So it wasn't the best piece. It wasn't, yeah. I didn't like this analysis that I did, but I mean, it is what it is. So, and I need you to take that into your exam. It just, you do your best. In your exam, you do what you can do. You try your best and you just hope that that's fine. Okay? Hopefully you have gone through all your work. Hopefully you are, you know what you're doing, but you can only do your best. And that's all that's expected of you. Oh my gosh, imagine watching the same episode of 2.5 Men for 5 hours straight. I know when I'm marking exams and things, I get so exhausted when students just keep saying the same thing over and over again. Like, it's tiring and it's just not a vibe. Okay, so our text analysis. Let's quickly discuss our text analysis. I just want to double check when our next streams are, just so that I can check that we're going. Okay, so we have one more stream. That's tomorrow, 11 o'clock to 12:30. And in that stream, I want to go through a text analysis and I want to work on it with you. Yes. Okay. What I'd like to do now is I'd like us to read the piece. I'd like us to discuss what the elements are of this type of text, what conventions this type of text has, and what things we notice as we go through this text. Okay. There will be more streams. There will not be one on Friday. I know you all are writing exams next week, though. And I haven't quite figured out what times I'm going to do that. I will be getting my battery back soon. But I'm hoping to get through paper 2. Now, paper 2 is going to work a little bit differently. I will do question 1A and 1B with you, and then I will just give you an explanation of how to do the different types of questions that might come up for question 3, 4, and 5, or question 2, 3, and 4. Okay. Yeah, most of the students who are actually in the stream are writing exams next week, like these specific exams. So okay, next week Wednesday and Friday are the days for English. Okay, so most people in the stream are writing exams next week. But I mean, if you are writing exams only next year, then that's wonderful. I will be posting more live streams through the year. I will be posting more videos through the year. And if you want, you can contact me and join my group lesson. A lot of these students are from my group lessons. Okay. But I mean, I'm trying to put some information online for AS English because there is very little actually walking through stuff and explaining stuff. So read the following text, which is an ecotourism advert from the Dian Fossey Gorilla Fund International Conservation website. Okay, so it is a non-profit organization, okay? And this non-profit organization has a conservation website. Now, what is this that we are looking at on the conservation website? We are looking at an advert. What type of advert is it? It is an ecotourism advert. So let's quickly ask, who knows what is ecotourism? Anyone? Nature tourism? Yeah, I suppose. According to UN's definition, ecotourism refers to forms of tourism which have the following characteristics. All nature-based forms of tourism in which the main motivation of the tourist is observation and appreciation of nature, as well as the traditional cultures prevailing in natural areas. So I don't feel like this article is going to be looking at the natural, the traditional cultures in these areas, but we'll see. Well, it's basically going to a place specifically for nature. So, I mean, if I could do any ecotourism, then I would go to Peru. Okay? I would love to experience the forests in Peru. I love trees. I'm like a really big tree person. So if I could go to Peru and go be with the trees, that would be amazing. Honestly. Okay. Yeah, I think it's very much for the layman. Ecotourism. It's tourism, it's holidaying, but not going on holiday in to New York City, but going on holiday because you want to see a specific type of animal or a specific forest or something like that. You want to go experience nature in that place. So, what to expect when you visit gorillas in Rwanda? A life-changing experience. This is what most tourists say after they visit the mountain gorilla. And Fossey Fund staff totally agree, since they spend every single day with gorillas. Each day is exciting and new discoveries happen all the time. So something I just want to know. I don't know if it's in this piece. They spend every single day that is quite extreme in terms of how it is stated. And then we've got each day again. So then this idea is repeated. Okay. Is exciting and new discoveries happen all the time. Okay. So this is again, all the time is again quite an extreme statement. Okay. I'm going to give you guys access to comment if you want to comment any things that you notice as we're analyzing this piece. Okay. Mountain gorillas are a unique species. With complex personalities and behaviors, as well as interesting social structures. Okay, so this gives us a bit of information. And this information follows on from the section title, okay? Now, something I also want to just note here is that in terms of structure, we had a bit of a review, okay? But the review was also related to the heading because it also tells you what to expect. Now, a life-changing experience. So this is all about you. Ecotourism. So I'm going to say here, the writer has an awareness that the tourism is probably happening for the tourist to experience it for themselves and not as a good deed. That they are doing for the gorillas. Do we all agree with me? Oh wait, I'm seeing. Okay. So, so this is, okay, you should expect this. And then it says, okay, but like, this is the information you need to know, okay? Our researchers take detailed notes about what they see amongst the gorillas each day, just as Diane Fossey used to do, and now we have a 50-year database of such information. Here are some of the details about the wonderful experience of seeing the mountain gorillas of so now it has led us into the next topic. It is starting the next topic with a title, with a probably a subtitle, and the subtitle, well, I'm just going to call it a heading. Let me just call it a heading, because they're all bolded in the same way. So I'm going to call it a heading, and I'm going to say that getting ready to see the gorillas. So there's always a lot that you can analyze from a heading, okay? So getting ready to see the gorillas, this is clearly written for people who actually plan to come or are already considering it. They are not assuming that the audience doesn't even know that they can come. Okay? So there is already some let me just think. I'm just saying there are assumptions, or there is an assumption that the audience has some prior knowledge. Okay, does that make sense? So what I'm doing here is called annotation, okay? And while you don't need to write things out in full the way that I'm doing it, and I suggest you don't when you're annotating, I'm just doing it because I know we're going to come back to this tomorrow and I don't want to forget what we've said today. So we're going to come back to this tomorrow and we're going to continue with this annotation, okay? And then you're all going to go home and write your text analysis. I might do maybe 2 paragraphs of the text analysis in the lesson, just so that you can see how I'm structuring it. I'll show you how I plan out my text analysis and how I approach it. I'm not going to prepare the text analysis before the lesson. I am preparing it with you in the lesson. Okay. And then, yes, I will see you all tomorrow then. Goodbye. I need to go to my next live stream, which is... Okay. Bye, everyone.